Hello everyone, myself Ritesh. I have 5 years of experience into data engineering and data analytics field. My key skills or key expertise are Power BI for reporting purpose, the database that is SQL, and I have also have expertise into Azure Cloud, which includes ETL, that is Azure Data Factory, ADLS, Logic Apps, and Databricks. I've been working for multiple MNCs since last 5 years. I've worked for retail, I've worked for automobile, and I've also worked for cloud and technological domains.
So, a very good evening and warm welcome to the KSR. Now, let's start the today's session. Let's start with a question that who all wants to see themselves as a successful data analyst or a data specialist rather than specifically a Power BI developer. Who all wants to see themselves? You can raise your hand. You can chat here in the comment window also. Now, usually everyone, whoever is joining this session, whoever has joined this session, wants to become a successful data analyst. Maybe they themselves wants to see as a successful Power BI developer or a data specialist. So you're at the right place. So today's session, we will get a good understanding why data analyst, what data analyst is, what important role the data analyst plays. So data analyst, just to simplify, is the most in demand and booming field in the current scenario or in the current industry market. If you see any specific data related trends, data analyst or a data specialist, the person who describes the data in terms of charts, in terms of visuals, in terms of any specific reports or dashboards, all together clubbed together as multiple um, key performance indicators, multiple charts. There, this will give us certain business related information, and this can solve multiple questions. This can, I mean, if a business has multiple questions, where can we increase, where can we improve our effort, the data analyst plays an important role because he's the person who interprets this data, who reads this data, and who combines this data to prepare multiple reports or multiple dashboards. So for next 30 or 40 minutes, forgot all your worries. You might have multiple questions, you might have multiple doubts. At the end, I'm open for questions, I'm open for doubts. So moving ahead, the agenda of today's session is why data analyst, why only data analyst and Power BI stack, especially why Power BI stack is more into demand in current market trend or booming exposure, skills required to expertise the field of data analyst as well as the Power BI stack, what can a data analysis or a Power BI lead can make you in future. So if you have any questions related to Power BI, you can ask me at the end. Mostly your questions would be completely resolved if you go through this session with all your heart. If you put all your heart, forget all your worries. At the end, I'm open for questions. You are free to ask any questions. So moving ahead, let us compare this pick. Now, if you compare it, which pick would give you more precise result or more precise information? Whether is it pick one or whether is it pick two? Okay. So pick one and pick two. See, the pick one is kind of messy. Everything is clubbed together. We are unable to see, we are unable to determine what type of cloth is present. I mean, if I'm trying to search any specific cloth, it will be very difficult to find. Whereas pick two, it is more precise, completely arranged manner. So similarly, the data in today's world plays an important role. So if the data is in, as compared to the pick one, it would be very difficult to understand. It would be very, very difficult to understand. If you completely see this pick one, compare it with the data. Maybe you have 10 GB of data. This 10 GB of data, and you're trying to fetch certain millibytes of data or megabytes of data. It would be very, very difficult to find in this pick one. And if you compare it with pick two, everything is arranged, everything is sorted manner, everything is in completely sorted. Or if you want to find any specific cloth, or in terms of data, if you want to find any specific information, it would be very easy because we know where the information is present. We know here the footwear is present. We know all related to clothes, where which cloth is present. So even hat is present here. Now, if you want to find any specific information in pick one, it would be very difficult. Now, comparing it with data also, nowadays, the more precise, the more sorted data plays an important role. Now, as a data analyst, we also have to go through this information. We may not get the sorted information every time. Most of the time, the data is present in this pick one manner. So as a data analyst, we have to first understand the data. We have to first sort this information and then make this data in pick two format so that we can interpret in the further Power BI reporting perspective. Now, since last 2 or 3 minutes, you are hearing data. Now, what data is? Data has it is the most significant asset in many organizations or many businesses possess. Everywhere worldwide, any businesses you see investing, they are investing more and more into data, because if you improve your data, if you unlock your secrets, there is an enormous potential to improve your business. Now we call data as a heart of business model. It plays an important role. Now, moving ahead, let us take this example. Now, this is the information present in the a kind of Excel format. Maybe this looks like a sorted format, but if you try to read any specific information, um, yeah, so request is, could you please read any specific information here, because everything is clubbed. What all information can you see here? Anyone, what all information can you see here? It's a kind of very clubbed, or even the data is sorted here, but very difficult to understand because it is kind of very small in size. Maybe our human eyes are not that easy to read. You have to zoom it and try to read. So if you try to see here, the column A, it is about movie name. The second column, it is about release period, whether it's a holiday, whether it's a normal day, whether it's a remake, whether it's a franchisee, what type of actor, who all actors are present here, who is the lead star, who is the director. Now it is very difficult to understand. Yeah, the data is sorted, accepted, but even though the data is sorted, our primary requirement was the data is in this format. If we have sorted this data into pick 2 format, now this is pick 2 format only, every information is sorted here, but still information is not that intuitive to the human eyes. But if I show you the next pic, you'll easily understand what this data is trying to figure out. If you see this data set, see every information is being clubbed together to create a one single report. Now this information is about Bollywood movies data set from 2005 to 2017. How many movies were released? Number of screens, what was the budget, what was the revenue generated. So these are all key performance indicators. Now, going back, we can get this information here also, but everything is sorted here, but still it is not readable. It is kind of difficult to understand. Now, if you change it to any specific report or a dashboard format, it plays an important role. Now, this is how the importance of a data analyst is. Data analyst plays two different roles. One is sorting the information. Once the info is sorted, in order to interpret, in order to show that data in multiple reports, that is an important factor. Now, moving ahead, anyhow, we are taking this example of the movies only. Let me ask you a question. How many of you don't watch movies? No, this is vice versa. How many of you watch? No. How many of you don't watch movies? Everyone watches, or anyone who is not interested to watch any specific movie, maybe not visiting cinema hall, or not at all interested to watch any movie, neither on OTT, neither visiting any cinema hall. How many of you don't watch movies? Okay, quite good. So I think no one, almost everyone, maybe very few, but you, okay, almost everyone watches on different platform. Yep. So if I share you few statistics related to movies of the Indian film industry, if I give you certain idea, 50% Indian watch movies. Out of whatever the population of India is, around 130 crore as of now, 50% of Indian watch movies. Now, this is an average figure. This is the information being analyzed. This is the information being kind of sorted information. Almost 50% of Indian watch movies. Let us assume this is on an average scale. If you assume 130 crore Indian population also, around 65 to 70 crore, which should accumulate around 650 to 700 million people watch movies. Now, if you compare this figure, this numerical figure, this is very, very vast, very, very large. And if you compare this information also, it would generate around $15 billion, which is around 15,000 Indian crore rupees. Now, that is how the important business, movie business here in India is. Now, this is only Indian figures. If you compare it with the world figures also, it would be way more higher. There are around 13 different sub-film industries. Now, depending on each language, there are multiple film industries in India. Now, why am I taking this example? Because in every perspective, data analysts or data analysis plays an important role. If you compare any specific industry in India, every industry is dependent on data analyst nowadays. Now, we might get data from multiple sources. If I take an example, what data analyst or a Power BI stack plays an important role in cinema, how it will improve the role of a cinema. If you are a Power BI stack, if you are a data analyst, how this role in cinema or what role this data analyst plays. Now, if I take an example, there are three different perspectives. Now, analyzing information, analyzing data is kind of different, but there are three different perspectives from a director and a producer perspective. Now, if a director and producer is trying to produce any movie, he might also focus on where this movie will run, what would be their complete business, what amount I need to invest, and what amount I would be generating from this movie. So this has to be this has to be thought, this has to be analyzed from the producer and director perspective. Now, if I take the second information from the distributor and cinema hall perspective, if you are producing or if you are directing any specific movie, it has to run from any cinema hall or either from any OTT platform. Now, wherever you go, data analyst plays an important role. Now, why? I'll try to explain it. Let us see the third scenario from the audience point of perspective. Now, there are three different perspectives as of now, which is producer and director perspective. So if a director is trying to produce any specific or a director or producer is trying to direct or produce any specific movie, he will first analyze where this movie will run, what amount I need to invest, and what would be the revenue I'll be generating. Now, if you compare it with the distributor and cinema hall perspective also, now these, if you compare any movie chain, might be PVR, might be Inox, might be Cinepolis, or any individual, or you could say any movie or cinema hall, local movie or cinema hall, they will first analyze who is the actor in that movie and what amount would be I mean we folks would be generating. So depending on that, they will give us screen time, they will give us the number of screens where they'll place, the cinema hall owners will place that movie. So wherever you go, the information, the data is collected. Now, what Power BI or what data analyst will do is he'll try to take all this information, he'll try to analyze it, first clean that information with the help of ETL purpose. He'll clean that information. Now, how this process goes ahead, even if you take any OTT platform also. Now, wherever you go, even if you take any specific OTT platform, now I'll simplify it, the role of data analyst. Now, you might get information in multiple information or might in multiple sources. The information might be in a SQL server. The information might be in any specific databases, maybe in Excel format, in a CSV format, or any text or PDF format. There are multiple ways of information. This information is extracted first. So once extraction is done, there is a transformation here. Now this process is also done by data analyst. Extracting the information, transformation. Transformation means cleaning that information. Now, once you clean that, you might have to store that information somewhere in the data warehouse. Now, what do you mean by data warehouse? What do you mean by database? We'll try to discuss in detail, but in simple terms, somewhere the information is unstructured. You are trying to clean that information with the help of transformation. And once the information is cleaned, you might store it somewhere in the local storage. And then you might use this visualization, which would give us multiple dashboards, reports, or scorecards. Now, this is used by business users. Now, you might also have a question that why I would have taken this example. Now, if you see here, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Z5, these are one of the largest users of Power BI. Every industry nowadays is dependent on any specific reporting tool. Now, if you want to see some information, Netflix around it generates $32 billion revenue, and they have 182 million. What is this MAU? Now, MAU is monthly active users. You will definitely come across this concept. What do you mean by MAU? If you're working as a data analyst, if you're working as a Power BI developer, this MAU term is used in most of the cases, which is nothing but monthly active users. Now, there is MAU, there is also POW. POW is also paid active users. For every OTT platform, MAU is person who is trying to actively use that specific maybe any OTT application, and POW is nothing but the person who is trying to pay that, who is trying to pay certain amount for that specific application. Now, this is what Netflix generates. If you compare Amazon Prime also, it generates around 12 billion US dollars, which has around 150 million active, or you could say monthly active users. Now, this every information can be interpreted in a Power BI reporting perspective. Netflix, they have implemented, they have been using Power BI since last 4 years. For every business decision which they are going to take, they are using Power BI to improve their business. If they are trying to focus on any specific region, they can create multiple reports. And as a data analyst, we have to first get the data. We have to sort, clean that data with the help of ETL, and make sure that the data is cleared, and then we can interpret in the terms of Power BI reports. Now, that is how the important data analyst nowadays is. He plays a very important role. If you take any specific industry, now why especially movies, or why specifically the movie data set or movie information I've taken? Because nowadays a certain movie is trending, and let's take the current market exposure, I mean the current market trend. In movies industry also, data analyst plays an important role. Now, if you see these all numerical values, if they want to improve their business, they can simply focus on their drawbacks. How do we focus on the drawbacks? By creating multiple charts. Where are we lacking? So who creates that multiple charts? Data analyst. Data analyst will create multiple reports or dashboards, and he can share it with the business so that business can decide where they are lacking. Now let us move ahead. Now, if you have seen the flow, you might get information in multiple ways where we use extraction. So it's a kind of ETL process here. Now, few folks will have a question that as a data analyst, do we have to also have exposure to ETL? Yes, nowadays, certain ETL, now, whatever information you're trying to visualize, whatever information you're trying to report it in terms of dashboards, wherever ETL is required, as a data analyst, you might also need to focus on this ETL exposure. Most of the times, data analyst only does this ETL process. Now, if the data is large, the data engineering perspective comes into picture. Now, that is completely different. Nowadays, as a Power BI developer, apart from Power BI, you also need to have exposure to SQL. You also need to have exposure to ETL concepts: extraction, transformation, and loading. Now let us move ahead. Current market trends and exposure. What are the current market trends and exposure? Now, if I try to give you certain information, now this chart will give you a global trend starting from 2010, what amount of US dollars have been invested in this data analyst industry or maybe data industry. If you see here, by around 2025, 175 billion US dollars would be invested in the data industry. Now that is how the large data industry would be in future. Starting from $2 billion in 15 years, it has drastically increased to $175 billion. Now that is how the important data plays a role. Now, more the data, more would be the opportunities in data analyst or maybe any data related role. Now, let us take certain fastest growing tech occupations, year over year growth. If you see here, if you compare any specific current market role, see data scientist, it's a part of data only. Backend developer, no, backend developer might be a Java developer or .NET developer, but even from, if you compare data scientist, if you compare any backend developer or maybe any Python or UI developer, data analyst plays an important role. This is the fastest growing technology nowadays. Data analyst or maybe any data engineering or maybe any related role to data. This is the fastest growing role. Now, if you compare with any role, if you check the cloud architect also, if you check the DevOps engineering also, there is a certain trend. 20%, 21% market share, 21% market share. But if you compare data analyst, he plays an important role because 50% of the market related jobs in future would be related to data analyst. Why? Because data is increasing day by day. Now, let us take few more examples. You also have a question that what all technical aspects we would be covering in the role, or what all important technical aspects as a data analyst needs to know. Now, if you check the cloud market share, now this is just an example. For a data analyst, you also need to have certain understanding related to cloud. Now, why cloud? Because nowadays cloud is available everywhere. Whichever information you're trying to get, all that information is present in cloud. You can see any specific, even if you're using any OTTs also, that all information is present in the cloud. Netflix, one of the largest users of AWS as well as Azure. Now they have a hybrid cloud. They use AWS in certain regions and they use Microsoft Azure in certain regions. Now, if you see the Z5, if you see any Indian OTT market, maybe Sony Live, they are primarily focusing on any top cloud providers. Now, there are 3 different top cloud providers in the world, which is AWS, Amazon, Microsoft Azure, and Google. Now, in our session, or maybe in our the Power BI sessions or Power BI tech we are going to cover, we are also going to capture, we are also going to teach Microsoft Azure. Now, why only Microsoft Azure? That I'll try to explain it. Because Power BI is a product of Microsoft, it would be more intact with the Microsoft Azure services. Yeah, there are few Amazon Web Services custom applications also where you can integrate it with Power BI, but almost every option available in Azure that can be integrated with Power BI easily. And you can see the trend of Azure is also increasing. It was somewhere around 12% in the Q4 2017. By Q4 2022, it is trying to capture the market share, whereas Amazon is kind of steady. The market share is somewhere downwards, or it's a kind of steady market share, not increasing, not even decreasing. If you see the Google also, it's a kind of way more below than the Microsoft and AWS. Let us take few more examples. Why only Power BI? Nowadays, there are multiple tools. You might have also come across Tableau. You might have also come across ClickView and ClickSense. You might have also come across MicroStrategy. There are multiple tools, multiple data analyst tools available. Why only Power BI? Now, this chart will give you more information. This is a Gartner chart. Now, what Gartner is, it's a kind of analysis firm who try to analyze the current market trends depending on the usage of any specific tool. Now, in terms of reporting, they have analyzed that Microsoft is the leader. Now, Microsoft means Power BI. Power BI is a product of Microsoft. I'll keep it as PB. Power BI is a product of Microsoft, and you can see in this 4 different quadrants, this quadrant is the leaders quadrant. Now, leaders means there are 3 different leaders here: Microsoft, Tableau, and ClickView. Out of these 3, Microsoft is way more ahead than Salesforce. This is way more ahead. And if you see the trends also, you can simply go back and search in the Google Gartner 2017 data analyst quadrant, or maybe reporting quadrant. Microsoft was nowhere in the competition, but starting from 2017 and 18, the Power BI has captured market very, very drastically. Now, many organizations are moving from Tableau to Microsoft, the Power BI. Why? Because it's a free, almost every information can be interpreted free. Yeah, Power BI service, it's a paid service, but Microsoft Power BI reporting is a purely free or completely free tool. If you compare it with Tableau, you have to pay certain amount to get you maybe any, if you want to create any specific reports also, there you have to pay certain amount. Whereas Power BI or Microsoft, they have completely made it free and it is easily available. The UI is way more easier to understand as compared to any reporting tool. Now that is why Gartner has given Microsoft an edge, that they are the leaders in data analyst or reporting services. Now, if I take an example at the last, this chart, the below world map chart, which countries, now this is kind of analysis done by Mordor Intelligence, which countries would be more intact with the data in future. If you see here, the Asian countries, this complete circle is in dark color, or maybe Asia as well as Pacific, which includes Australia. These countries in the Asia as well as Australia would be more intact to the data related roles. You will get more and more opportunities here in these countries as compared to any African region, as compared to the one of the world's largest markets, which is Europe as well as American markets. The Asian markets would be more intact to get data analyst or data related roles in future. Now, that is how the data, or that is how the large data analyst market is, or maybe data market is, and these countries will have multiple openings going further. Now, what all skills we are going to learn in this course? We will be starting with SQL, which is must. If you want to learn, if you want to come into any data related role, maybe data scientist, maybe data engineering, or even data analyst, SQL is must. Database, structured query language is must. You should learn this SQL wherever you are in a role of data. Second and most important aspect is Power BI. Power BI, our primary focus would be on Power BI, which will also include Microsoft Fabric stack. Now, what do you mean by Fabric? I'll try to explain it, but in simple terms, Power BI, including Microsoft Fabric, we are going to cover. Apart from this, we would be covering Azure Cloud. Now, why Azure Cloud? I've given you an idea because Power BI is a product of Microsoft, and Azure Cloud is more intact to Power BI as compared to any cloud. Now, in Azure Cloud, especially, we are also going to learn ADF. What do you mean by ADF? It's an ETL tool. It's an ETL service, inbuilt service available in Azure Cloud, where you can use for data movement as well as cleaning the data. Apart from ADF, we are also going to cover these concepts: key vaults, storage accounts. Now, these are all semi services you could call. as well as ADLS. Now, storage accounts also includes Azure data lakes, blobs, as well as simple data lakes. And at the end, as a data analyst, we are also going to cover few exposure or few insights related to Databricks, Synapse, and Logic Apps. Now, apart from this, there are few more questions, or you might also have a question that can we also cover, or can we also go through Power Platform? We do also have a Power Platform course, which is designed where it will include Power Apps, where also it will include the Power Automate or Power Flows. That would be a different perspective. Yeah, that also would be given from KSR's end, but you have to compare. I mean, you have to check with the team how different that course would be. For this course, we are covering SQL, Power BI, the cloud computing concepts, which includes ETL, which includes all these services. At the end, we are also going to cover Databricks, Synapse, and Logic Apps, whichever is required for a data analyst nowadays. Now, going ahead, what do you mean by Fabric? As I've given you an idea, what do you mean by Fabric? Fabric is nothing but a unified platform. Microsoft, in order to compete with the current market scenario, they have introduced a product where they have clubbed all the services in one single umbrella. Now, that one single umbrella is called as One Lake. Now, this is one single umbrella, and that one single umbrella is called as One Lake. They have clubbed data factory, they have clubbed data engineering, they have clubbed data warehousing, they have clubbed data science, they have clubbed real-time analytics, they have also clubbed Power BI, all together in Microsoft Fabric. Now, data activator, it's a kind of admin related process, but all these services, they have clubbed together in one single umbrella. Now, you also might have a question that what do you mean by clubbing? Power BI will intact remain independent service. You can use this Power BI in Fabric, you can use Power BI independently. But if you want to use data factory, if you want to use ETL for Power BI perspective, you may need not go to Azure cloud. If you have a Fabric account, you can directly go and you can create multiple ETL processes or ETL pipelines in the Fabric itself. Now, Fabric is a part of cloud, but it is all together, all services clubbed together in a single umbrella or a single one lake. If you compare all the services, these are all independent services available in Azure cloud. They have clubbed all the services, and this is still in preview mode. You might also have a question that what do you mean by preview? Preview is nothing but in the beta version, or you could call it as a implementation mode. Not every services is freely available in Fabric. You might get 60 days of free trial, but in that 60 days also, every service is not freely available because everything is in development mode. It is yet to release completely. We as a KSR would be covering every service individually. And at the end, I will also give you an idea. What do you mean by Fabric stack? If you want to learn Fabric, first you have to learn data factory independently. You have to learn data engineering aspects independently. You have to learn data warehousing or storage aspects independently. You also have to learn Power BI independently. Then only all the services can be integrated in Fabric and can be used. If you don't know every service individually, it is very difficult to understand the Fabric concept. But if you know every service, yeah, everything can be clubbed in one single umbrella. Now, this is how the Fabric nowadays is. It is still in preview version. Maybe it will take some time to for Microsoft to release it in complete mode, but still organizations are trying to check whether this Fabric is feasible for this business or not. This is not at all released in complete, or you could say in end-to-end 100% manner. This is still in preview mode. You will get 60 days of free trial, but in that free trial also, every service is not easily available. You have to request the Microsoft team. They will try to first see if that request is valid or not, and they'll try to see if that information would be processed in Fabric or not. If you want to use any individual service, you can use this service from the Azure cloud. Now moving ahead, who can take this course? Now you will have a question that I'm not from any engineering background, I'm not from any tech specific background. Now apart from engineering, see, there's an option. Just a moment. Apart from engineering, you can also take, if you are a part of any non-tech role also, maybe from BCom, any commerce graduate, maybe from any business graduate, maybe MBA or MCA or related to BCA, BSc, science field related graduates, maybe any purely non-tech, that is which arts graduate or any non-tech field, even if you are from any pharmacy or architecture related background, or any specific person who is not related to engineering also can take up this course. This course will completely cover whatever information is required for current market data analyst or a Power BI developer. Now, how long this course would be? If I give you an idea, this course would be around 4 months. It would take approximate 80 days. Now you'll have a question that how 4 months is equal to 80 days. This, I mean, the number of sessions we would be covering from Monday to Friday. Saturday and Sunday, there would be week offs. So out of 4 months, 80 days would be utilized. And how that utilization would be, for SQL, there would be 20 days. That means 20 lectures. For Power BI, it would be 35 days. That means 35 lectures. For Azure Cloud, basics of Azure Cloud, it would be 5 days or 5 lectures. For Azure Data Factory, it would be 10 days. And at the end, for exposure of Databricks, Synapse, and Logic Apps. Now, these concepts are also asked in current market scenario. As a data analyst, you also need to have exposure to Databricks, Synapse, and Logic Apps. Now, what do you mean by Logic App? Logic App is 100% similar like Power Automate. Now, someone had a question that I want to learn Power Platform course also. Now, Power Automate is completely similar like Logic Apps, where we create multiple flows to process the data. Now, that all information we are going to cover in 10 days. So approximately, if you see here, 20 plus 35, it would be around 55, 60, 70, and 80 days. This course duration would be 4 months, starting from 14th of December till 2nd or 3rd week of April. We would be covering all these aspects within 4 months, around 80 days. Now, the duration would be, one lecture would be of 1.5 hours, minimum 1.5 hours. One lecture would be minimum 1.5 hours. So 1.5, around 90 minutes. Now, if you want it in minutes, you can convert it in minutes, 80 days into 90 minutes. Now, coming back, these are few jobs available in data analytics with Power BI and Azure. If you see any job available in market nowadays, they're asking you for Power BI. Apart from Power BI, they're asking you certain other services. Now, what do you mean by certain other services? Certain other services means cloud, SQL. In cloud, they're asking you ETL. They're also asking you to have exposure to Logic Apps or Power Automate or Databricks or Synapse. Now, these all services we have clubbed together in one single platform or one single course, and we are going to cover all these technical skills all together in this complete 4 months or 80 days. If you see any job, if you see any data analytics or Power BI opening, you will always come across they are asking you certain different technologies apart from Power BI. Now, if you see here, this is an opening related to EPAM systems in Pune, lead Power BI engineer. Apart from Power BI, they're also asking you for SQL. Now, if you see here, they are also asking you for exposure like ETL tools, Azure Data Factory. Now, Azure Data Factory, it is a product of Azure, which is more compatible. There are also other ETL tools like Informatica, AWS Glue, or SSIS. If you see here, there are also certain concepts related to cloud. You will also come across concepts related to cloud also. any specific opening. If you search it in Google, if you search it in Naukri, you will come across every opening there. You'll find Power BI. Apart from Power BI, any cloud, any ETL, as well as SQL. Now, SQL is must for any data related role. Structured query language, the known concept of database, it is must for any data related role. So we would be covering all these topics in this complete 4 months duration or 80 days lectures. One lecture would be around 90 minutes, 60 plus 31.5 hours, minimum 90 minutes. Now, apart from these who can take this course, I might have skipped or I might have forgot to mention few other fields also. If you are not even, I mean, if your field is not even mentioned here, you are free to learn, you are open to learn this course. Every concept would be covered in detail. Now, if you see any specific um, coaching center apart from KSR, Power BI would be different course, SQL would be different course, the Azure concepts would be different course. And for every course, they will charge separately. But as a KSR, we have clubbed all these courses, all these technical aspects in one single course or one single duration only. And in complete 4 months, we would be covering as a full stack Power BI, which will include all these technical aspects. Now I'm open for questions. Thank you.